Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. Thanks for having me. So I would like to invite you for a short journey back to our childhood. Do you remember your favorite toys? Well, I remember mine. I had a lot of different cars, a tiny car called Bystritz. I had those USSR-made Soviet cars with opening doors, a wooden train, a construction set. But also I had this, Kaleidoscope. And it's amazing how many memories are tied to that little toy. If you probably had one, then you would remember that feeling. When you are looking inside the tube, you are twisting a little bit, and then you are getting a new pattern emerge. I remember being fascinated with that. And I remember the question every curious child eventually asks, what's inside? Well, it's magical, but it's also very simple. There are few angled mirrors located at a triangle or a pentagon and tiny colorful pieces locked between transparent plates. And every twist of the tube rearranges the particles a little bit. And reflections take over, and a new mesmerizing pattern appears. Years later, and a few years back, I found myself playing yet another game. Just one as fascinating. I was able to combine my heartfelt passion to the cars with my professional skills and attitude, and I started as the HMI lead in Harman Automotive. We started a major project for a large automotive client back then, and at the same time we were developing our internal framework for scalable automotive user interfaces development. And the deeper I got into this field, the stronger sense of déjà vu grew inside me, because in many ways, developing scalable UIs is similar to designing a kaleidoscope. So our challenge was really ambitious. We had to create a platform which would support a dozen of different brands, 100 of different configurations. And each brand has its own story, has its own marketing structure, has its own client, has its own DNA, so that we had to enable the unique brand experiences and allow brave experimentation. And it goes without saying, we had to develop it with a low cost and a short time to market. Now, let's look into the peer of my kaleidoscope. But instead of looking from the outside, we get pulled inside. And it feels like descending inside the glassy skyscraper when you are floating down layer by layer, floor by floor, surrounded by reflections and by lights. And while you descend, you observe these floors, these layers, and they are not static, they are living. People are working there, designers, developers, technical artists, engineers, managers, teams. Everybody is contributing to the common result. And in many ways, it resembles me of a development of the user interfaces for an automotive. So if we go further with the digital instrument cluster development and look at from the top to bottom, from the alarms and events, telltale indicators, gauges, automated driver assistance systems, onboard computers, navigation, backgrounds, you name it. We see that on each layer, there is carefully selected information. But all of them together, they contribute to the cohesive user experience. And the infrastructure defines what we can do. It has a set of the rules, it has a set of requirements, and it defines the end result for us. So we use the layers composition, the amount of them, their ordering. We use the composition techniques. We use the communication methods, states, applications, application state machines, interfaces, and prioritization across the UI. But what the driver sees in the end is the cohesive user experience. However, there is one detail which is not like in my childhood kaleidoscope. Back then, in this toy, there is a limited number of the UI particles here. And I'm using basically all of them when I'm twisting the tube. Here, we are dealing with dozens of brands with the hundreds of different configurations. So instead of just a few particles, we have to operate with tens of thousands of particles. And we have to select them at the right moment of time into the right layer and package them into the right structure. While we descend back to the lower layer of our kaleidoscope, this is the place where all these particles live. So we appear in the UI library. On the one hand, we have design assets, those brand elements like images, colors, and fonts, brand-specific or transversal brand agnostic. On the other hand, we have brand UI components, these unique design components which reflect the brand, which deliver you the brand identity through the state-of-the-art design, which cannot be packed into any box. There are UI function groups, those clusters of the common elements. Think of everything related to a gearbox or drive speed zone, for example, packaged together logically. Then you use it in different shapes to rapidly build the user interfaces. 3D models, textures, all these elements, they provide depth and realism to the user interfaces. And the parameterized templates, this is a bit special entity for dynamic reusable objects. We do not use the static UI templates for a common elements. Instead, we integrate them, encapsulate into the common base from the functional perspective and from the visual perspective. And we expose the key parameters, the key properties of this to the users, to the designers, to the developers, so that at the integration phase, they can provide the variations of these capabilities and they configure the instruments. With this regard, we receive not only one instrument, but a complete series of instruments. Overall, in the UI component collection, we have everything to create a new skin: reusable, adaptable, and ready to reflect the brand. And there is one great example to show the usage of parameterized templates. Here, the circular gauge represents the family of the speedometers, tachometers, power meters, and whatever else meter templates. And we have configured two instances of that for the speedometer and for the tachometer. We've played with the functional aspects. We've played with the visual parameters. We configured such parameters as the complete sector, complete circle, half circle, or the sectoral. We configure the start and end of the needle. We configure the needle rotation. We configure the needle movement dynamics from soft dampening to the instant jumps, which makes difference for speedometer and, for example, power meter. And of course, we configure the UI, fonts, colors, and assets. And once it is ready, we can stream it as a QML texture onto the 3D object. And this way, it can be seamlessly integrated to the surrounding scene. Well, it's worth mentioning that these parameters are exposed to the brand designers, those who do the brand ideation design, so that they can ensure that the brand can be reflected through the template. And from the UI perspective, those parameters which are not configured in the code, the assets, they also resemble the same layering architecture as the complete HMI cluster design, so that we can explore different configurations, variations of the assets by reusing the components from the component library. We can replace assets partially at once, and we can do it at any time, starting from the design ideation until basically when the car is already produced and at customer premises, we can deliver this no-code solution using the over-the-air upgrade, and that would deliver additional value to our customers. Imagine that we have found 3 alternatives to this gauge, and we would like to explore a bit more. So we would like to put that into the vehicle context. That's very important. So we need to simulate the environment, and it is very easy. So we load the scene, we load the asset package, we start the user script, we validate the parameters, and then we repeat. So it is as easy as playing with the Kaleidoscope. We load, twist, look, and repeat. Nice, so we can play. But also, it is very important because the digital user experiences for an instrument cluster in the vehicles, they are heavily dependent on the vehicle context. That means that the development environment must have the vehicle context exported there so that designers and developers can communicate. This is one of the challenges, because many of the projects, they implement their custom project-specific tailored solutions. With the one simulator concept, we can bring the vehicle context to the project from the T0 when the project starts, or optionally, we can also integrate it with the one-time integration effort at the later stages. And we can bring HMI project to the vehicle context. That means that designers and developers can interact in this environment. They can test all the variants, because all these variants in the car, like speed, gear, road information, navigation, they are not just important. They make all the difference for the development. And then we can also go beyond the vehicle context. That means they can unlock more scenarios than available for you in the test car. You can change the brand in the click of a mouse. You can replace the assets. You can change the display configuration. You can test right-wheel drive, left-wheel drive, whatever else. So yeah, we can play with that. And while we're playing, in my childhood, my parents told me that it's good to share my toys with the friends. And of course, I did that sometimes. But seriously, how I can ensure that my HMI platform can be running on every operating system which I need it without the change to the user code? For example, how I can bring it to the series of the hardware, starting from the low end until the high end, running different BSPs, different operating systems, from QNX to Linux and then to Android, and I develop on Windows or iOS. How I can ensure that I'm doing the same? And we can develop the platform-agnostic HMI logic. That means that there is a middleware abstraction layer that can generate a boilerplate code and connect to the operating system services at the compile time without any additional integrations needed, without no manual effort. By that, we can share. And it looks like our Kaleidoscope is mostly complete by now. So let's have one more look from the outside. Now, if I look into the tube, I see all the same particles: telltales, alarms, events. But I don't feel the complexity of the system. What is left is just the experience. This is what the driver sees. This is what the brand stands for. This is how the platform feels. And it looks like this simple toy is inspiring enough for us to develop the platform, build it with Qt, that can deliver these unique brand experiences and allow bold customization. Because in the end of the day, we are not just delivering the HMIs. We are trying to shape how people feel behind the steering wheel. That's what we aim for. That's what we care for. And that's what Qt platform enables us to do. So I would like to thank you again for visiting me in my childhood and having a look at my Kaleidoscope. Thank you.